people suddenly no longer were caring for each other. Suddenly men wanted to control the sexual and reproductive activities of women. The concept of territory emerged. This is at the precise moment in time when agriculture was invented. Agriculture put an end to the nomadic yearly wanderings of the human family. It put emphasis on sedentary lifestyles. The problem with agriculture, especially in the early phase, was that it was so phenomenally successful. You can imagine farming the alluvial detritus of these river valleys that had never been touched. Surpluses were created. Surplus, in the presence of a dominator or hierarchical attitude, must be defended. And so suddenly you have haves and have-nots.
Ladies and gentlemen.
You're having a nightmare. What if it's true?
Ladies and gentlemen.
Alan, it's a possibility, isn't it?
The very word secrecy is repugnant.
Secrets.
In a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers,
Constant, extreme danger.
which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger,
Extreme danger.
that an announced need for increased security
This is Conspiracy Queries with Alan Carr.
will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control.
You're crazy.
And no officious, high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes.
Isn't the Pentagon suspicious that all the building would blow up?
Or to withhold from the press and the public
I think you're just looking at things for the first time.
the facts they deserve to know.
You've had your whole f***ing life to think things over. What good's a few minutes more gonna do you now?
The facts they deserve to know. They deserve to know. Deserve to know.
Welcome to Green Crush. I mean Conspiracy Queries. I mean both of them at the same time. Thanks for tuning in. We're late today. I always promise we're going to be a little bit late. So, you know, that's always necessary, it seems. But today's been a bit nuts. So it's a live show. skeleton staff. We're doing what we can. We're freaking late. What are you going to do? Welcome. We are going to be talking with someone today who we've already spoken with. So we don't need to do any kind of pre-call, recall. This is a guest of the show, friend of the show, Dr. Michelle Ross. I don't remember when we had her on last time, but it feels like it might have been last year. I don't know. I can't remember. But she is she's someone that I found myself very much interested in because she put together a book called Vitamin Weed. And just before she released that book, I had been theorizing that this cannabis thing they like to take us off the air for. We'll get to that in a minute. YouTube. They like to tell us that it's dangerous and horrible, but that it's a drug. It's a drug, man. It's a drug. It's going to mess you up, man. That's what they want to do with it. That's what they've been doing with it. And these are all lies. And I can't even count them all. I thought we had a 6 or 10 part 1 hour show kind of thing, 6 or 10 hours worth of information to explain how this fallacy of cannabis control could be explained. But of course, it goes on every day. They're inventing more lies, more frictions and fictions. And, the cops are rubbing their hands. They've got systems coming up that don't even really, they can't tell if anybody's actually impaired, but that's not going to stop you from getting arrested, pulled over. In BC, they're going to take you right on back to the police station. How about that? You're going to go back to the police station in BC directly. Can't even do it at the side of the road. Foolish liars all. And they're going to take you back to the station, and you're going to find out there exactly what the expert at the police station has to say about things. Remember, you're already late for work or late for your party or late for whatever it is you're going to do. You're having your rights suspended, and you're being busted by some cop that doesn't know anything and who is suspecting that you are under the influence of cannabis. And just because it tests positively in your system, these folks are led to believe that means you are impaired. These are cartoons, folks. I really like cartoons and I love animation, but I do often use the word cartoons to insult. And I don't mean any disservice or or disrespect to my animation business friends. But when people and systems and governmental boards and cops are going to set together a series of events that are full of shit, and then also going to wreck your lives with it, I'm going to call that cartoons. A lot of people in your life will throw together cartoons. You just look at them and say, this is cartoons, what you're doing right now. It means it's made up, it's two-dimensional, even if it looks three-dimensional, even if you have the glasses for it. And it's nonsense. So thanks for tuning in. This is a relatively short episode of Green Crush Conspiracy Queries together, and it's going to be long. It's going to be longer than a lot of episodes that are out there on the web and on iTunes, which is where you can find us, by the way. iTunes, go to Green Crush and or Conspiracy Queries with Alan Park. Both of them have my name on the end. 1L, thanks, British spelling. Sorry, won't apologize, but there it is. I just did. And go there to iTunes, and if you're already downloading the show and listening to it, fantastic. You don't even know we're late right now. This is so cool for the downloading folks. But if you are one of those people, please do us a favor. Disconnect, unsubscribe, send an angry letter if you will, and then resubscribe immediately. And help us out. We are trying to build a bigger presence, so that we can be strong enough that when YouTube eventually takes us off, which they have been doing to all kinds of cannabis-themed websites, and I figure the only reason they haven't done it to us is we're a little bit too small, perhaps, and we don't have the word cannabis or weed or other flag words such as in our name. Although we do have the word green in there, and they've already been taking down all kinds of websites, and not websites, but YouTube sites. I'm sure the websites will come later, right? Google, parent company of YouTube. But listen, if you're on YouTube now and you're listening to us now, thanks for doing that. I appreciate it. Glad you're finding us that way. But get ready to have us disappear. That's what the mindset is, you see, because this is dangerous stuff. I mean, you could sit there and watch some idiot eat a Tide Pod all day long. They're not going to pull that off. I know that's an old reference from months ago, but it's the same kind of thing. I mean, cannabis is a burgeoning industry. It's a food. It can help you become more intelligent. Not only does it not cause brain damage, but it can actually kill the amino proteins that create Alzheimer's. So what kind of brain damage is that? It's so very healthy if you want to try to lose weight, if you want to boost a lot of your immune system abilities to fight off other illnesses, such as I have done. What's the logical step here? Wipe it off the face of the platform. Perfect. Okay, great. So while the cops are telling you you can't have something in your system that they can't really test positively for, that even if they did doesn't indicate whether or not you are impaired, while we're living in that world, and we're living in the world where the positive, truthful, honest, scientifically based information about cannabis can be brought forward, let's wipe those off the platform. Let's get those out of YouTube. And YouTube says they're doing it because they can't make money on it. That's kind of like a kid in school telling you he can't find a way to jam paste in his mouth. Really tired and really oppressed. I'm feeling like a raccoon trapped in a corner right now, partially because my eyes are dark, but also because I'm getting sick and tired of these logical, truthful facts being used as pokers and gates and pitchforks to hold us down. The government doesn't know what the hell it's doing most of the time, and we'll find out more about that. We'll find out how fantastic it is when governments understand things about substances and foods and drugs. Because in Portugal, what they've done in Portugal, they've approached things very differently than we have done here in Canada or the United States or anywhere else that I know of for that matter. But our guest today, once again, Michelle Ross, I'm sure Ross will be happy to correct me if I'm wrong. She has returned from a trip to Portugal, and we finally have a first-hand account of just exactly what the hell's going on over there, which is completely different than what's going on over here. But just before we get to Michelle, Dr. Michelle Ross, yes, the same one that was on reality shows of yours. She's a doctor. She's written this book. It's called Vitamin Weed. Vitamin Weed. And this book, Vitamin Weed, does that sound like it makes sense to you right away just by reading the title? Vitamin Weed. Yes, it does. It is it's available. It came out March 6th, and it's a 4-step plan to prevent and reverse endocannabinoid deficiency. That's what you have if you're suffering from a host of maladies, all kinds of illnesses. You have an endocannabinoid deficiency. I wound up being fortunate enough to find the research enough to be able to be comfortable enough to tell people this. Most people, and particularly those that never partake of cannabis, well, you're all wandering around with an endocannabinoid deficiency. Like your teeth would be horrible, right? If you didn't have your teeth, and your gums would be just disgusting. And you would be in such horrible condition if you never took in vitamin C. Right, because you're supposed to have that. Well, with vitamin weed, you're supposed to have that too. And I know we have some older folks listening, so I'll say, well, some MFers, back in the 30s, they decided to take this stuff out of our system. Went out of the food. We weren't getting the CBDs anymore. We began to get more ill, and it's been 80 years of this. So people born now are having a tougher time than people born 20, 30, 50 years ago because there's all kinds of nutritional deficiencies going on the planet. Stop me when I'm wrong. And so Dr. Michelle Ross, who knows all about the food capacity and the healthful capacities of vitamin weed, a.k.a. cannabis, is just back from Portugal, and I can't wait to get her on. First of all, though, I have to say that this, human being, I guess I could leave it at that. That's pretty accurate. Who runs the Liberal Party of Ontario, Canada, who ushered in one of the most regressive, ridiculous systems of cannabis proliferation for the selling of it. Amazing that they even decided to adopt the name cannabis and not still call it marijuana. They're going to tether the price of this at one end. They don't want it to be too profit worthy. They don't want to make it seem like you can make a lot of money doing this, but they also have to sell it a little bit lower than what the black market says it's going to offer. So here's a government that can never get one thing right. They're going to try to pin two anchors to this floating price, and that's not going to work at all. I can't wait to see that crash into the side of the bus, because I have, and many people have, been telling these fools they can't get away with this. Not only will it's not moral, it can't possibly work. It's thoroughly unsustainable. And now we have this Kathleen Wynne, who presides over Ontario, probably only for another few weeks. There's an election coming up. And if you don't like her opposition, you can blame her for it. It's been messing things up pretty badly. People are going to run to this other clown who tells us one thing and does another. Every day, by the way. There's no one to vote for anymore. Can't you see the system's collapsing? The whole thing is an entropy ball. Why do we even participate in this nonsense? It's pitchforks and flames time, storm the Bastille time, folks. It's not pick up a ballot and hold your nose and hope for the best and watch it all deteriorate like it always does. Call to arms, MFers. Shouldn't be saying that right after Mother's Day. Hope you had a good one. I had a good one. I spent some time with a nice mother. Not mine, but she's still a nice mother. That's the main thing, right? Anyway, this gal Kathleen Wynne, she has gone ahead, and her Liquor Control Board of Ontario, that's in charge of liquor distribution, beer, also wine, all of the spirits. Now they're taking over like a bunch of criminals moving in. Hey, we're going to take over. These guys are they're selling booze. They put a tweet out the other day, I did, and I haven't gotten any response to it. Why would I think I was going to get a response to this? It's a picture of one of their ridiculous LCBO only available here outlets, which they're trying to do now with cannabis, and they'll fail miserably, by the way. Oh, by the way, boycott OCS, boycott government weed. Hashtag if you need to in front of it. They put out a poster now to sell alcohol. You know, as you do. You have a marketing board, but they can't do that with cannabis. Can't make it look interesting, can't make it look attractive. Can't put a lot of colors on it, all the packages got to look the same. And on this one particular package, it's going to say the name of the company, it's going to say what kind is it, indica, is it sativa, very clinical looking thing. Cannot be made attractive because they know it's dangerous. But on the other hand, they don't have the research to show us the health aspects. What? Say that again. Okay, they tell you it's very dangerous and there's all kinds of problems that can happen with it. But when you bring up the healthful aspects, like none of the people sitting across from me who want to try to argue with me on this point, they will tell you that this substance is dangerous. Now, how the hell do you know it's dangerous if you don't have enough information to negate or agree with the fact that it's healthy? These people are lying to you constantly. This is a truth broadcast blast on two different channels at the same time. Once again, Conspiracy Queries with Alan Park and Green Crush with Alan Park. This Kathleen Wynne has a poster up. This LCBO, Liquor Control Board, has a big poster hanging out, a big fabric. This would have cost thousands and thousands of dollars to reproduce many of these, printed on vinyl, hang them in front of these brick and mortar outlets, and it says, hip to sip. Okay, fine. I'm probably going to have a beer after I do this show. It's hip to sip. That's great. Why are we always catering, though, to the alcoholic bent? How can it be hip to sip, but also not cool to toke or vogue to vape? Because they're vampires. That's why. They're all liars. And I have tweeted them. Why can you say hip to sip with a danger? It's proven that alcohol is a dangerous thing to take into your body. It's caused all kinds of internal organ problems. It's ripped apart tons of families. It's responsible for thousands of, countless thousands. I'm not even going to count them all up. Deaths on the highway. But it's hip to sip. And we must toke it home if we must toke it all. I mean, it's just, I'm so friggin' tired of it. So I don't know what to tell you about the mindset of people that roll this out, but further, I can barely tolerate people who just go along with it, with the mindset of, well, the government says it's, that's what we're got to do, so that's what we're got to do. Go away. Get an island somewhere and live on it, far away from the rest of us with cognition. I'm raising my fist. You might hear that in the theme someplace if I can get the right one to come up at the end. So we are. If I don't get an answer to this particular slight from from these fools at the LCBO, I will be. I will try to spend some time with them on the air next week, and we will get them on. I was going to call the police who are responsible for. They're going to kill these dogs. They're going to kill these dogs in Illinois. I'm laughing because of the insanity of it, not because I want to see dead dogs. These folks are these cops in Illinois. You notice how I'm not touching on any topics today, specifically which articles, because, hey, don't have a lot of time on this episode. This is going to be the shortest one ever, maybe. But these guys are going to kill these dogs because, if you legalize cannabis, now the dogs don't have anything to do anymore. Might as well blow their heads apart, right? This is the way a policeman thinks, at least an Illinois policeman anyway. It's incredible. It's incredible that these folks are going to do this. I mean, they're getting all kinds of strange ideas. Let's kill a bunch of dogs. If you don't keep cannabis illegal, we'll kill these dogs. This is amazing to me. This is kind of a messed up old world. So before we get to too much further, I do want to say before we call Michelle and on the phone, we have been running for a couple of weeks now a contest online with Ross's Gold Glass and West Coast Gifts. Ross Rebliati, of course, was the winner. He's a gold medalist, as a matter of fact, in the Olympics of snowboarding in 1988. And they gave him a hard time about it because apparently cannabis was involved in his victory. He's got a great story about it. We featured it on the show earlier. But anyway, he was innocent. But anyway, the notoriety from the cannabis has provided Ross with the fame that none of the other clean-cut users have announced. And I'd love to get Michael Phelps on the show sometimes, too. Anti-drug people hate a guy with 9 gold medals or whatever he's got now. Yeah, so anyway, for a couple of weeks, Ross's Gold Glass, he's out in Kelowna, BC. They have some fantastically well-machined products and just beautiful stuff. And we have been having a contest for a 12-inch glass. That's a black glass water pipe. And the winner is from Instagram. Well, we have all the platforms available at Green Crush Pod. Go there, you'll find us everywhere. And the winner comes up from Instagram. He's on I'm gonna guess Vancouver Island based on his handle here at BC's Upsquatch. Does that make sense? BCSUP Squatch. BC's Upsquatch. That's Scott Polson. Scott, congratulations, you have won the you should see this thing. Beautiful gold, black, classy. Your friends are going to try to get it from you. Take good care of it, okay? Also, we have another commercial, which I will get to you later, about Lift and Smile Canada. But first, let's get us on the air with Michelle. Do-do-do-do-do. Doodly-do-do-do-do. Yes, Michelle Ross is, she is a, well, she'll tell you in a minute, but she knows about it. I got in trouble last time when I said Michelle is a neurologist, and I was wrong about that. And unfortunately, all I could remember was the fact that I was wrong about it, not what she actually is. A neuro, something to do with the brain anyway. Like I need a little help with my memory on this one. But here we go. Let's see where she is. Boom, boom, boom. Let's go, phone. Come on, man. How come this isn't going on? What's happening here? Oh, gosh. Okay, hang on. All right, here we go. Okay, but can't say this out loud. You know why that is. Right. Oh, are you discerning what that is? Because you're not supposed to do that. Hang on. Let's give her a ding. Oh, hope she's home. Or wherever she is, whatever this number is. Let's turn that down a little bit. Here we go. Dr. Michelle Ross coming on in a second or two. That took a while, eh?
Oh, Dr. Michelle Ross speaking.
Dr. Michelle Ross, Alan Park from Green Crush. How are you?
Oh, wonderful. So excited to talk today.
Oh, I'm so excited to talk today. Can you just say hello to everybody in Canada and the rest of the world? We have listeners all around the world. Actually, we have more listeners around the world than Canada now, which I'm super happy about because a lot of Canadians have missed the boat.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. Hi, Canada. Hi, rest of the world. Thank you for listening today.
Oh, we're so excited to have you on. I'll tell you why. Briefly, really quickly, you were here. When was that last time we had you on?
Oh, goodness. I cannot recall. I've had a little bit of a whirlwind in the last couple months.
Yeah.
A lot of traveling.
A lot of traveling. Well, it was before you went to Portugal. And it was a couple, 2 or 3 months before you came to Portugal. It was before your book came out, so I'm thinking early January maybe. I don't remember exactly, but tell the folks exactly who you are, because this is a foreshortened show with just primarily what you have to bring forward going into the mix. So tell the folks who you are, and you can go right past the part about being on a reality show. Let's get right to the medical aspects of it, what you are and who you do, and exactly what to do with the brain you know most about.
Okay, perfect. Well, my name is Dr. Michelle Ross. I am a neuroscientist, not a medical doctor, but I have been performing research on the endocannabinoid system, as well as studying effects of other drugs on the brain for now over a decade. And I have been coaching patients as a health coach based on the phenomenal results cannabis has had for me and my different health problems, ranging from fibromyalgia to nerve damage, endometriosis, a long laundry list of issues. And I've used that experience really to help people, not only in the United States, but in Canada, around the world, through the beautiful power of the internet and video coaching. I also founded Impact Network, which was the first 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to education, research, and advocacy on cannabis for women and women's health. I recently actually just moved to California and signed a lease today.
Ooh, congratulations.
It's been a fun day, yes. I've returned back to California where I used to live. But I spent the last 4 years in Denver. But I'm really excited to now be spending all of my time this year really focusing on growing my health coaching practice here and helping other health coaches across the United States really get their footing, because we have so many amazing caregivers and coaches, and people that are really great healers are not always the best business people.
Oh, tell me about it.
And it's this medicine has to be applied in the same way that we see other subspecialties of cannabis. And so I actually just finished my MBA too, because I didn't have enough degrees before. But I got my MBA so that I could have really the strong business skills, not only to help grow my business, but to also help to grow the businesses of all these phenomenal people that I've met that are doing great work, but really need some help to take it to the next level, so that we can compete with the doctor's offices, with big pharma, big surgery, and all that.
Wow, that's amazing. So quickly tell us now, because I really want to get to Portugal, but I just want to set this up a bit more. Just remind everybody, and if you're a new listener, thanks a lot. This is a great day for you to join us. Michelle's been here before and knows what she's talking about. Please tell us what the endocannabinoid system is, and tell us what we need to put into it and why that's important.
Sure. Well, the endocannabinoid system is a neurotransmitter system in your body. It's actually the largest neurotransmitter system. And before I get too geeky here, what the heck is a neurotransmitter? Yeah. Well, it's the signals between two brain cells or neurons. And so that's really how your brain cells talk to each other and all the other nerves in your body. So basically, if your body has a message that it needs to tell, hey, muscle move, or hey, brain, get hungry, that's how it communicates. And so the endocannabinoid system is really cool because it actually regulates all of your other neurotransmitter systems, the ones that help regulate mood, the ones that help you get in the mood for sex, the ones that basically make you do everything. So if something's wrong with your endocannabinoid system, something is wrong with every other system in your body.
And that's why cannabis is so.
Important.
That's why cannabis is so helpful, right? I mean, they have this fallacy where people who ridicule it or want to keep it suppressed, they'll say, "Well, it's ridiculous that this drug can affect so many different health maladies because you need specific drugs. You need a statin for cholesterol. You need a heart medicine for this, but you don't need all of these things because it's not really a drug." Isn't that it?
It's funny because I have a term for this, and it's really basic. I mean, a lot of these words with the endocannabinoid system are really hard to say. I mean, endocannabinoid, that's a mouthful, right? So when we talk about these other cannabinoids, when we don't even talk about them as their abbreviations, like CBD is easy to say, cannabidiol, not so easy to say. So people trip over the language. But I like to call this all vitamin weed. If you make this sound like a nutraceutical, it makes it a lot easier for people to understand why you need to take this and what the benefits are. So if you look at vitamin D, right, no one will say, oh, I shouldn't take vitamin D or vitamin C. But if we don't have these vitamins, we have deficiencies in them, we get sick. We start to feel achy, start to feel depressed, gain weight, all these different things that our body needs these vitamins for. If we don't have enough of them, we start getting run down. In the same way, your body makes its own endocannabinoid. It makes an endocannabinoid called anandamide, which again is also hard to say. But
anandamide, yeah, sure, anandamide, yeah. Right.
Yes, you're anandamide. Now you're making it sound sexy. But anandamide, is actually so important, and there's a whole bunch of ways that your body doesn't make enough of it, or doesn't have enough receptors for this in your brain or in your body. And so you can actually have an anandamide deficiency or an endocannabinoid deficiency. So I actually just released a book about this. So really excited to talk about it.
You did, March 6th. How's it going?
Very good. I'm actually really excited to move to California too, because it provides me the opportunity to talk to so many more people about this. Right. In Colorado, it's funny because we've had legal cannabis. We were the first state to have recreational cannabis, so people are very much focused there on the recreational aspects and not the healthy living aspects. And here we have this amazing plant that can not only treat cancer, but might even be able to prevent it. And, and the focus there is like, let's get high as we can on 420, every single day of the year. So it's a little bit of different focus. California is a lot more healthy, healthcare focused and healthy living focused, and it's a really great opportunity to be out here and being able to preach basically the gospel of vitamin weed.
Well, that's cool. So listen, Michelle, you've lived in Colorado. You're now in California. You're just there now. You just signed a lease, but that's okay. You know the laws. You know the laws have been changing around the country.
Yeah.
And so now tell me, everybody that tries to legalize cannabis or goes ahead and does it, they usually put together some kind of research team to go around and read things and perhaps travel to places and understand the way the laws are set up or the community standards, etc. They research all kinds of things, and it's my belief and understanding that they don't always come back with the best of what's available and the best systems, and perhaps there are some societal differences there, but primarily they keep erring on the side of repression and control. You have just gone to Portugal. Now, we don't hear a lot about Portugal in the news. I've had a great deal of difficulty contacting people there able to or willing to even discuss the very different landscape of what's going on in Portugal vis-a-vis cannabis legalization and other things. And let's also get into the mushroom talk that you're going to bring us. But what's going on there legally, and what are your thoughts from having gone over there? So what I'm saying, folks, is they have a very different system of drug access and crime and punishment over there. And Michelle has been to this place, so let's hear all about it.
Sure. So I am a partner of Drug Policy Alliance, which is one of the biggest drug policy advocacy nonprofits and political action groups in the United States. So I was part of a coalition of all the other nonprofits that they support or provide funding towards. And they brought all of us in person to Portugal for some of those very main reasons that you said. You could not believe how the system operates unless you're actually there, unless you're actually hearing these words from the Minister of Health and from these organizations that are providing this care, because it sounds so foreign and alien to us that actually treating drug users as human beings that need help, or just recreational drug users that don't need your help and are just having fun, is a completely different scenario than in the United States, Canada, and some more conservative countries where any person that uses any drugs is a bad person and needs to be punished and go to jail or face fines. Or a mother, for example, that happens to have a drug use problem. And we have to keep in mind, too, this is a huge thing, right? Sometimes people get pregnant and they don't plan on being pregnant. Especially somebody who is perhaps having a substance abuse problem. Nobody wants to be a mom, a pregnant mom on heroin, for example. But these things happen, right? And we in the United States live in a country where we criminalize drug use, and we put even harsher penalties on moms that happen to become, women that happen to become mothers, right? And instead of getting these people help, we then take away their children. We further put them down this pipeline that is going to harm them instead of help them. So this is what things are like in Portugal. So I'm going to introduce you to Upside Down World.
Okay.
Number one, yes.
Looking forward.
Number one reason why we're so confused by this system is that they have completely free drug rehab programs from the government. So if you have a drug addiction problem, you can go to a clinic and get treated for free. In some places where there's socialized medicine, there is some access to it. I believe there's some countries, but most countries do not have this program in place at all. And in fact, in the United States, what we see is that only the rich can truly afford very thorough and especially inpatient programs. If you do have access to reduced income drug treatment clinics, they're always outpatient. So, for example, you have to go and get your methadone pills, stand in line, and then leave. You're never actually going through the whole, detox system, supervised by doctors and nurses and getting mental health care and all these other things. So that was shocking. And it was actually very good treatment. It was not substandard treatment. So that's number one.
Okay.
Number two, we found out that if you are a drug-addicted mother, you are allowed to keep your child with you during that drug treatment problem.
But doesn't that just ruin the family,
so they
though?
Separate the family.
They don't ruin. Doesn't that ruin the family to not put the mother in jail and to not saddle her with incredible legal costs? Doesn't that wreck the family?
No, mothers are so grateful to go through that program and to not be separated by the children. You know that drug addiction has a strong stress component. Can you imagine how stressful it is to think that in order to get help, you would have to have, lose custody of your child? That might make a mother not want to go get treatment and continue their addiction, right? Because a mother's love for their child is so strong, and it's really, really just heartbreaking to separate mothers from their children. And so this system, they actually looked at us like we were crazy when we said that the mothers are allowed to stay with their kids. Like, they were like, why would you take them away? Like, literally thought we were crazy for asking that. Like, that's how that works in our country. So I'm going to back it up just a little bit and tell you some of the reasons why this drug policy and free drug treatment clinics operated in Portugal.
Okay, let's hear it. Roll it out. Fantastic.
Yeah, so they actually had a horrific heroin problem decades ago. And so they had very strict, I think almost like socialist regime rule. Then their government changed, and they had their borders became more accessible to travel. And so different countries were able to import drugs in. And so basically, imagine if you had no access. It's almost like a kid that grew up in a strict household, right? They couldn't go out and party. They couldn't drink behind their parents' back. And then all of a sudden, they go to college and they go hog wild, right?
Yeah.
So basically, this country had no access to drugs. Then, due to a government change, they all of a sudden had all the drugs coming into their borders, and people didn't know how to react to that. So basically, heroin and drinking became a huge problem. And, just like we're having an opioid epidemic in the United States, people were dying at a very, very high rate, and people were using opioids at a very, very high rate. So they decided that they had to do something drastic to make this change. And one of those changes, including free drug treatment, was also to decriminalize drug use and possession, not sale. Sales is, of course, still illegal in that country. I can't recall any country that allows legal drug sales outside of cannabis, but possession of small amounts of any drug, including cannabis, is legal. And the amazing part of this is that they took drug possession out of the criminal justice system. So
wow.
in fact,
say
for
that
some reason,
again. Say that again.
Yeah, they took drug possession out of the criminal justice system.
So
when you're caught with drugs for some reason, and it's a small amount, which they deem to be personal, you go to social services if you'd like. If you're repeatedly caught, in public with drugs or something like that, like there might be some more thorough social services that they try to work with you, but they acknowledge that some people use drugs for different reasons, right? If you're using heroin, maybe there's something stressful going on in your life. Maybe you do have a dependency issue. You show up in front of medical services and they try to help you. Do you need job placement? Do you need counseling? No one is forcing anything. These are all options. And in case you just don't want to go to work and you want to continue using drugs, or you have some kind of issue, you're allowed to operate as long as you follow all the other laws, right? If you're causing problems with your drug use, then there's going to be consequences. Or if you're selling drugs, that's a consequence. But it is amazing to hear that so many people do not go through the justice system. I mean, we have a justice system here in the United States and in many other countries that continually penalizes the drug user. Okay, well, even after you served your time, right?
Sure.
Oh, well, you're a felon. You're a felon for drug possession.
Yeah.
Well, you can't get an apartment. Oh, you can't get a job. We don't hire drug addicts. Those are the kind of stigma that we face. And what that does is cause drug users to continue to be criminals. Because if you can't get a job and you can't get an apartment, what are you going to do?
Probably sell drugs.
Yeah, pretty much. So it's
now, if there's anybody that's a right-wing kind of person, and I hope that we have a few of them listening, because they should be, not that I'm left-wing, but they should definitely be understanding that they're going to have this mindset. Well, where do you get all the money for this counseling and this free help that goes on in Portugal? And I already have an answer to that, but what do you think the answer is?
Well, I think when you have less people overdosing and you have less of the harms from drug addiction, right, you actually reduce the burden on the healthcare system, right? Right now we have a system where we don't treat people that are substance abuse users until they end up in the ER and overdose, which is very costly, right?
Yeah.
If we focus more on harm reduction and prevention, which they have prevention programs too, obviously they don't want everyone using drugs, but again, it's treated as, okay, now you are using drugs. How do we help you get off of it? Not how do we put you in jail and make you pay for your drug use. So they are a smaller country, of course, so there's obviously always issues when you're trying to scale things up to the size of the United States. Like we talked a lot about, how would we implement this in the United States or in other countries? And of course, there's a lot of challenges. But I think framing drug users as people first shouldn't be that hard. It really shouldn't. And it means changing the language of things, right? Like in the United States, we use the term marijuana, which is racist, you know, like we need little changes. First, changing the word to cannabis or reframing the way we say, even addicts, right, or addiction is really a toxic term for people who use drugs. And when we frame this as everyone uses drugs, do you drink caffeine? Do you drink coffee in the morning? You use drugs.
Sugar?
Right? We
How
all
about that?
use things that, we all use things that change our perception of daily life and help us cope with the things that we don't like about life, right? Coffee helps us wake up to a job that we'd rather sleep through, sometimes, right? We use all sorts of different things to help either numb us or help us cope or help us enjoy things better, right? Like, for example, with cannabis, I hate to call cannabis a drug, right? Because it actually enhances food, enhances music, lots of things, lots of pieces of life, as well as being, pain medicating and used for many health conditions. So it's really amazing to see how this works. Of course, we're going to have more and more talks about how we implement or how we push for policy change. But I think the way to start in many countries is really with the decriminalization piece. And what that means is making small amounts of different drugs legal and not incur those criminal penalties that stop you from getting a job or getting scholarships for school or moving into an apartment, because that's the first piece that starts the downward spiral. When you don't have access to normal services.
Yeah, that seems to be their stated goal is, hey, we don't want society to get wrecked by all these people getting messed up on drugs, and so we'll put them in jail. But it really speaks to decriminalization as a key point to get started with, and we're not doing that here properly, and I don't know exactly how it is in all of the different jurisdictions of the world, but in Canada they're just reshuffling the deck, and they're dropping a lot of these criminal charges, and they're adding a series more, like 9 times as many or 6 times as many more charges. And so if you decriminalize first, take it out of the legal system first, and then you don't have people getting into these situations where mommy has to go to jail or daddy or whatever. And then guess where all that money's coming from, as well as the medical health benefits? Well, you're not spending it on all the arrests. You're not spending it on all the officers needing to go through the court system. You're not spending it on judges particulating over the very salient matters of a case. All of a sudden, there's your community help supply money, and you're not criminalizing people. Does that change it? Did that have a palpable change of tone? Could you tell, it's almost hard for me to articulate this question. It is hard for me to articulate this question. But there's a different mindset in different areas of the world when you go there. And if you're in a place now, what are they, 20 years deep into this experiment, or is it only 10 years? How is it? Does it feel different? Does it feel safer and less, you don't have a cop over your shoulder if you're puffing a joint walking down the street?
I felt very safe there. I wasn't, you never know when you go to different countries how things will go, right?
Sure.
Especially, I'm not very well traveled. I've been to Canada and some other countries, but it was actually really my first time really making the whole European trip, and I felt safe walking around. I also felt safe, even like as a cannabis patient without cannabis on me, like you still feel like a criminal most of the time,
right.
And it was just nice to know, like, no matter what, like, oh no, if I left the cannabis gummy in my purse, nothing is going to happen.
That's the aspect I really mean. That's what I'm really trying to tap into. Like, for example, I've got a way to describe it now. You know when you're too young to go to a bar and you kind of snuck in there maybe, and you know that at any minute you get, you're tempting fate. You might get in trouble. They could toss you out at any second. And there's a bit of a rush, but there's also a bit of fear in that you're not supposed to be in there, but you've managed to pull it off. Now, if you pull that away from cannabis or these other drugs where you just never have that problem, it's like the difference between sneaking into a bar underage and pulling it off is such a different feeling than being, into your early 20s and so on and walking into a bar like it's no big deal, and it has a different air of relaxation to it. So I'm assuming it feels like that almost everywhere regarding any of the usage of these substances over in Portugal.
Yeah, they have needle exchange programs out in the open. Like, if you need help, they will provide help, like, no questions asked, no matter what the request is. And so it's very much more natural. I will say that there are some points that are not great. For example, we know now with clinical research that, and lots and lots of anecdotal evidence, as I say, that cannabis, including CBD, can be very helpful for treating addiction, from treating heroin addiction, cocaine addiction, alcohol addiction, anything. And their health, ministers or department did not believe that cannabis could ever be a treatment for drug abuse, and they don't use it in their clinics. They don't stop people from using cannabis while they're in there for some other type of drug treatment, but they did not acknowledge that it could actually be used as a treatment. So they do have a treatment program that's working very well in their country. So if they don't need to use cannabis in the mix for that, but right now we see it as a tool in the United States and other countries that have very archaic drug treatment programs, because we see people being able to maintain sobriety from other substances when they use cannabis, and they use it in a mindful manner. But they did not really know about it in the research. They didn't see a place for it in their system. So again, we have different societies, different ways of doing things.
Sure.
But, I do feel, that conversation, I was like, let's engage and continue the conversation, because I think as many things as that we learn from them, there's still pieces that they can learn from us, right? No one country, and I want to stress this, no one country ever has 100% of the right approach, and no one country's policies will ever fit every single place. So we're all very different people, and we have different societies, different histories, different reasons why our people do different things, right?
Yeah.
Just like you can't put American policies onto Canada, you can't put Canadian policies on in America and hope everything works for the best. We're very different. But it was beautiful to have that international perspective on drug policy, and I hope I can visit some other countries. Apparently, there are some Norwegian countries, too, that have different drug policies. So there's these little pockets of almost experiments in drug policy. So we'll see how that changes probably through the next decade if other countries adopted it. And I do think it's interesting to see. Portugal adopted this program. Spain didn't. France didn't. All the other countries in Europe didn't adopt this. So why didn't they, right? That's a good question.
Well, I find it fascinating that, we're so happy to have you on to give us this deep look into what's going on there, because it's so different in the way that these other countries are handling it. And it doesn't seem to be very difficult to get information from and about those countries, but it seems very difficult to get information about Portugal and how they're doing. And I think it's because it's going very well. And they don't really want to share that kind of information with other places that are economically tethered to making sure it's under police control, it's under government control. It's still a terrible thing. We're going to let you have it, but gee whiz, it's going to be a big old hassle to use it. And I think it's just more of this, international idea of oppression. They just don't want us to have these kinds of insights and awarenesses that can come from taking this plant.
Well, we did ask them, why don't you take a stronger position as a country and leading the drug decriminalization or legalization effort, right? We don't see, advisors from Portugal on TV telling us we should do this, right?
Exactly.
The world should follow our lead. And it was very similar to how, for example, Colorado was the first state to legalize recreational or adult use marijuana. And a lot of people didn't want our state being known as the pot state. And we're going to legalize the rest of the country. They didn't want to be known for that. And I think Portugal doesn't necessarily want to be known as almost like in Amsterdam, all the drugs are illegal here. They don't necessarily want to be known for that. What they did was realize a problem in their country, which was the heroin epidemic, and they created a solution which phenomenally worked for them. And they even had reservations. They said if we didn't do it then, if we decided to invoke the same policy now and start this program now, they weren't sure if it would be successful. So they're not sure whether it was a fluke of doing the right solution at the right time. And thankfully that policy was in place for, over a decade, 2 decades, so that people are still, they still have less overdose and opioid death rates in that country than most countries, but they're not sure if you can just take their policies and their programs and put it on another country and see that same dramatic reduction in opioid problems. So, drug policy is very complicated. And they were almost like, we would rather have the United States copy what we're doing, and you guys can be the leaders. So you can go get be trolled on the internet and have people send you hate mail, because that's what happens when you advocate drug decriminalization. And I do that as a neuroscientist who studies drug addiction. People have very strong feelings. Like, how dare you let a heroin user continue using heroin? You're a bad person. Why would you want to make heroin legal? And, there's obviously less opposition to other drugs becoming legal. For example, like psilocybin or magic mushrooms. People seem to think those are less harmful, obviously, than methamphetamine and heroin. But when you look at it, you have to legalize all drugs for people to not have that stigma to go receive treatment. As long as it's illegal, they're going to hide what they're doing and not get help. Yeah. Because, again, removable children or jail time. The second you make things not criminal and you make it a health issue, people are free to get the help that they need. And that's what our country should and other countries should care about. They should care about their health of their citizens. They shouldn't be punishing them for whatever situation they got themselves into. And I mean,
that's the kernel of truth, though. That's the kernel at the center of this, is that they should be coming from the place of care. It sounds like Portugal came from that place in the first place. And even though they are saying, well, we don't know if we could do it again if we had to start now, and we don't know if other people can do it, and it's a brand new way of looking at things. On the one hand, as accurate as that may be, so is the notion that all of these other countries, who for years and decades have made it illegal and repressive, they're now ushering in programs that are also untested and aren't going to work, and they're coming not from care but on the place of police enforcement. And that's the first people they went to when they decided to change things in Canada. So there's no grounds or history to prove that the way Canada's doing it is going to be great, but that's the way they're going. They're going for control and repression and beefed up police services, and it seems to be that is more the trend. And as you say, we don't know if it's going to work. We do know in Canada that there are going to be loads of people suffering legal challenges with the new paradigm of the legal system they're going to bring in with it. That's the problem. So I say, let's try it the Portugal way. we don't know exactly how anything's going to work, you know. So let's get busy with the compassionate angle instead of the law and order police rolling tanks through town way to do it.
And I mean, even states and countries that have legalized cannabis, they still have a lot to learn. Like, for example, Colorado in places has a huge problem with the opioid epidemic. And we have drug addiction inpatient centers that cost $30,000 a month to go to, and some of them are even state funded, and they're empty because the people that need the help the most cannot afford $30,000 a month. It's cheaper to buy heroin than go get help, become clean from heroin. And so, you know, we're not adopting these smart approaches to drug treatment. In fact, we even tried. There was several nonprofits that tried to put in a needle injection, a safe needle injection law, because again, people are basically shooting up and overdosing in, say, bathrooms of libraries, public libraries and public places, and it's really, really bad right now. And then we have legal cannabis, and we could be using that to get people off of drugs, but then we're not allowed to because of our archaic, backward laws about rehab, and also the miseducation of rehab. Healthcare professionals, they're taught that cannabis is bad and that you can't use cannabis when you're in a drug treatment program, even though we know now from many groups across the country that you can, one, get people clean using cannabis only, or you can have a traditional treatment program but let them continue using cannabis, and they will be more successful as long as they're mindful about their use than not including it, right? People that are more likely to stay sober from life from the substance they're addicted to if they're allowed to use cannabis as needed for stress and brain chemistry and mood regulation and all that. So we have so much to learn. We have so many things that we need to do to focus on really treating humans as humans in our own countries. But I'm really proud to be part of the Drug Policy Alliance and continue that work. And even though it's a big order to really change drug policy and basically provide freedom and for all humans, really that's a huge mission, right? Like, to make us have the best quality of life possible. But you know, there are some amazing and really smart people working on this. So every year we'll get closer to those goals.
We'll keep talking if you have time, but let's throw out right now the Drug Policy Alliance information that we can for people if they want to find out a little bit more about what it is you do there. Where can we read up on those folks?
Okay. So I do not know the website off the top of my head. I was going to say dpa.org, and that is somewhere German. So I think it's drugpolicyalliance.org.
Okay, just look up Drug Policy Alliance then, and this is a nonprofit.
Yeah, Drug Policy Alliance. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think it's fantastic that you're going around to all of these different places. Do you ever enjoy the fact that you're obviously a very well-read and intelligent, well-researched person, and then one of the biggest criticisms of cannabis use is that you have to be a moron. You probably ruined your brain while you were using it, and that's obviously not evident when you speak. Do you ever pull that out like a saber and beat people down with it when they tell you it's such a bad idea?
I mean, I still people all the time, and in fact, I almost had to stop myself from laughing every time I went on a tour of places here. So even though cannabis is legal in many places in the United States, and for example, medical marijuana has been legal in California since 1996, there's still a lot of stigma when you're renting homes. And so people will ask me what I do, and I have to make sure I don't say cannabis scientist. I say scientist or health coach or author. And then they'll say things like, can I see your book? And so I had copies of my book I was showing people because that's like one of the ways my income. And so I show them my book, and they're like, you smoke the marijuana, you can't live here. Like literally conversation ended. And I was like, I actually don't smoke inside,
right.
But you know, that's the stigma, is that you're going to smoke marijuana in here, you're going to be a bad tenant, you're going to break things, and cops will come and you're a bad person. Literally, in most landlords' eyes, marijuana smoker equals bad person and bad character. And I had talked to maybe like 8 different places, and some of them had Googled me. They said, you didn't tell me you were a marijuana person. And I was like, oh, God. So literally, I had to be quiet, you know, about what I do. And it's so weird that here I am. I'm very proud of what I do. I'm like international drug policy expert and nonprofit leader and all that. And I have to basically lie about my profession.
Yeah.
Like,
then your potential landlord goes home all pissed off that you would even dare bring this up, and swallows down like 2/5 of gin on the way home, just stewing about how much gall you had to come in and do that.
I know. I mean, like, literally, I had one lady, she says, I'm a mother of 3 children and you're a bad person. I was like, really? It was almost like comical. Like, it was like you're standing there and the door just gets slammed in your face.
Well,
like,
this is all
I was like, I'm a good person.
It's all a testament to the efficacy of brainwashing, I guess. It's done a very, very good job taking people, they're taking their minds from how great a substance can be and, you know, criminalizing it, advertising it as such, and therefore we have so much undoing to do. It's a ridiculous notion. So,
and we also have to ask, you know, how much will it take to change people's minds? Like, imagine, you know, something crazy happens in the United States tomorrow, and they legalize cannabis. It's legal everywhere. How long will it take for people to get out of that mindset? So it's still legal, but your landlord's still allowed to discriminate against you and not let you into the building or try to make a way to get you to leave, because unless it's written into law that you're protected against discrimination, just like you are, you know, against gender or age or disability, right? Unless there's something that says marijuana users won't be discriminated against, they're still going to be discriminated against. And so it's just a very interesting case here of how we change those perceptions, because it's really hard to convince people to use cannabis once they realize that they use cannabis and then they're like basically like on a list somewhere where it makes basic things like getting jobs or finding apartments harder.
Sure.
So we have so much work to do.
What would you do here in Ontario and Canada here, this province of Ontario and Canada? And there's similar variations of this everywhere. It's just literally hard to keep up with all the nonsense. They have these various concerns, okay? They have various concerns, and some of the concerns are, I don't understand how they could put them all in the same head. But, you know, there's what about the children? And, you know, they care about the children so much that they...
Somebody please think of the children!
Yeah, so we do think about the children, but they're trying to protect the children to the point where they won't tell them what's healthy about it, and they're only saying that it's dangerous and you're going to ruin your life. So on the one hand, you've got children who are not supposed to be around cannabis. This is part of the Ontario policy. Can't be around, shouldn't be around it. They're very afraid that there are going to be cannabis stores anywhere near schools. Meanwhile, so are bars and alcohol outlets all over neighborhoods with schools. But anyway, so they have the kids are sacrosanct, and they have to keep them over there and safe. Then they have another rule where it says you have to buy this cannabis at a certain legal government outlet, and then you can only take it straight home, and you mustn't have it anywhere else, but you have to smoke it or consume it somehow. And not liquid, and not in a liquid form either. That's illegal. But you have to do it in your home. Guess what? That's where your children live. Further, if you live in a rental apartment, there are a lot of people, landlords and other people are saying, I will not allow any tenants to do this in my home. So you have to smoke it at home, but you might be a tenant of an apartment and you might have kids. I mean, this is just the kind of nonsense that we're trying to pick ourselves apart from over here. What would you do about that?
Yeah. I mean, it's a difficult situation because we still see that here in the United States, too. And so, for example, there was a paper that recently came out demonizing basically parents that use cannabis. And they said, how dare these parents use cannabis in their home? They're exposing their children to secondhand cannabis smoke. Yeah. And what you have to realize is that if you live in a state where it's illegal, of course you're not going to be consuming cannabis on your front porch. Then the police will come, and then you'll end up in jail, and your children will end up in foster care, right? And even in states where it is legal, they usually have rules about public consumption, which could be your porch or your backyard. They consider it not your private area. And so the only legal place for you to consume your cannabis is in your home, and that's where your kids are. We have an issue here.
Same problem.
Yeah, we have exactly the same problem. And I think it is wrong to shame parents for that. I do think that, there might be ways that we can use vaporizers and things like that that might not expose children to smoke. But at the same time, the easiest solution would be to decriminalize cannabis use anywhere in public. I mean, if anywhere that you shouldn't be smoking cigarettes, yes, you probably shouldn't be smoking cannabis, but it should not be you can have a glass of wine on your front porch, but God forbid you use a cannabis e-cigarette, on your porch, or you're in trouble with the law. So we really have to just allow safe spaces for people to use these substances. And I think California, for example, is one state where we have smarter laws about that, and we even allow consumption at different events and things like that, where I'm seeing now smarter laws being put into place than in other places. And I think what's happening is that governments are starting to understand what works and what doesn't work. And the more restrictive the policies are, the more harm it causes families, workers, all of that. And so you actually have to be more lax and allow more things to happen in order for people to make the right choices.
Yeah. Well, give us your top 3 takeaway points from your experiences in Portugal, just to summarize, or if there's something that I forgot to mention or you didn't mention, please pop that up now. And regarding policy changes and differences of policy, so that people hear, and in Ontario we're about to go into an election, they can talk to their to be potential representatives and/or if they choose to vote at all for these people. And other people are looking at policy changes all the time. There's elections going on everywhere. There are people needing to bring this information forward. It's never going to get old. What are the top 3 big hammers of truth you can bring, some top points you can bring from your trip to Portugal, just to have people in people's mind to go, look, it's different over there, but look how well this works. So I guess the number one thing would be to decriminalize it so that people aren't going to jail for it and separating themselves from their family. But what other sort of intricate points as an expert that you traveled over there could you share with us to make sure we can remember on the way up?
Sure. So I also want to stress that legalizing drug possession or decriminalizing it does not mean more children use drugs or more adults use drugs. In fact, the amount of drug use didn't say drastically increase. It didn't really decrease either. People take drugs. What decreased was the amount of people dying from drugs, or the amount of people going to jail for drugs and the harms associated with that, like an absentee father, right? Or, children that go to jail for it. And so decriminalizing drugs does not cause more people to use drugs. So that's the number one thing. That's what most people assume, that if drugs were legal, everyone would be doing them.
Why
That's
do
not
they
the
assume
case.
that? Why do they always assume that? I know exactly what you're talking about. People say that all the time. Where do they get this information? It sounds nuts to me.
Well, again, government policies are a form of control in the first place, right? Why do you need a law to stop the people from doing those bad things, right? And so they think that without Big Brother, in the corner watching over us, making sure we don't do these bad things, if all of a sudden these laws were removed, that we would all do all these bad things all the time. But guess what? Humans are mostly responsible people that are looking out for their own self-interest and the interest of those that they care about, like their families. Like, just because drugs are legal does not mean we're going to spend our entire paycheck on drugs, right? Like, we have self-control and self-regulation, right? We don't need Big Brother or big government to tell us what to do 24/7. And so, fortunately, the government feels like if they don't tell us what to do all the time, we'll make bad choices. But in fact, we have an amazing brain that helps us make good choices and other, things to keep us in check. We're not all crazy people just running around doing bad things all day. We're human. Yes, we make good choices and bad choices, but for the most part, we make choices that make sure that we're alive the next day.
Yeah. So that's one thing. Okay. And what else?
Yes.
Two more things.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Two more things. One, if we really want people to get treatment for drug addiction, we have to make it as low cost as possible. People will not receive drug treatment if they cannot afford it. Again, if it is cheaper to do heroin and buy heroin than it is to receive treatment for heroin addiction, you will continue using heroin. That is the only thing that makes sense. And making drug treatment so expensive no one can have access to it will ensure that people may remain drug addicts. And then the final point is that, again, contrary to common thought, that mothers that are addicted to drugs are not bad moms necessarily. They are moms that are in need of help, and letting them stay with their kids lowers their stress so that they are more likely to be able to come off of the drugs that they are addicted to and maintain their sobriety. So keeping families together during drug treatment increases the likelihood of success and improves outcomes not only for the mom but for the children. So keep families together during drug treatment to have optimal effects on families.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming back on the show. I wanted to ask you, don't forget, we have to be compassionate, right? That's where you said all of this legal changes from Portugal came from. And you and I and everyone else listening on board that does understand this stuff, and if there aren't people that understand this stuff and you're trying to get it and you're listening to this show, I'm going to extend you the courtesy that because you don't use cannabis, your brain isn't conditioned enough to understand how good it is. So, when people really criticize it and get on top, oh, it's terrible stuff, and we need to make these laws, and it's disgusting, and people should be ashamed of themselves. These poor folks it's like they're trying to work out in the gym and never use protein. You got to understand they're not all there, these folks. They're just a little bit lower down the ladder, and a little bit of compassion and some time with them. Maybe you can turn them around. I know one particular young gentleman who's a friend of mine, and his mother was one of these older, can't possibly touch that stuff. That's the devil's weed. And she was suffering an incredible amount of body pain, for various different reasons at her advanced years. And so this guy snuck her a cookie. She makes cookies all the time. He made it seem like one of the ones she bakes, and within 45 minutes, an hour, she was feeling really fantastic and commenting on it. And then she was told that she had been eating a cannabis cookie, and just when my young friend was going to tell her, he was a little nervous to share that with her, and just before he was getting ready to defend himself and say, I was just trying to help you, she was asking for a couple more. So that's all it really takes is to try it out and understand it. This is not a devil weed. This is not a demon thing. If you're religious and right-wing, check it out on page 1 of the Bible. It's in Genesis 1:11, 12, and 29. Have a look. There's nothing really wrong with it other than the series of rules and regulations that would put one in jail for having touched it. So I really appreciate your investigations, your knowledge, and your book. I hope, once again, Vitamin Weed, check it out. Where can we get your book, Michelle?
Well, the easiest way to find it is on Amazon. It's available in both paperback and ebook form, and it is for sale in Canada. So you can go to tryvitaminweed.com, and it will direct you to all the links to be able to purchase. And I definitely implore you to read it. And in the first chapter of it also goes into a little bit my story too as a scientist and how it really changed my life. So I'm hoping that, whether you read this book for yourself or you give it as a gift to your mom, to your coworkers, to anyone that may not be convinced that this is medicine, it really provides a real good way for you to both understand the science, but also understand how to change your health with cannabis to really have the best life you can live.
That's amazing. I'm so glad you did come on the show again, and thank you for giving us this update. And I'm going to tell you you'll be on the show again, but you're the first one to come back as a second guest, so I'm guessing it's going to be a little while. But do keep in touch with us, and we are definitely following your career with the keenest interest. So thanks again.
Well, thank you. And again, I'll be sending off a book off to you once I load all my moving pods that have all my books in them. So hope you have the time to read it and enjoy it.
I will definitely have I've had the time to read it for a while. I can't wait to read things such as that, and I'm looking forward to it very, very much.
Thank you.
All right, so thank you very much, Michelle Ross. We will speak to you again. You have been great towards your contributions to the information on this show, and I'm so glad to know you. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, Alan.
All right, take care. That is Michelle Ross, and wow, how about some of that info? That's amazing. I love that stuff. She is... I wish I could have gone to Portugal to find that stuff out, but Michelle Ross is... she knows what she's talking about. Go ahead and try and argue with her. So now we have an announcement to make. Oh boy, this is. Let me see if I can get this thing going on here. Just before we got a few minutes left here. We're not quite done yet. I needed to get Michelle on relatively quickly because well, she was a last minute fill in too. We've been looking to get her back on for a while, but we had another guest who wasn't able to make it, and hopefully she will. I won't mention her name just in case she never does come on, but we hope to get her back some point or other down the road. Yeah. So, let's just open up the vault here. Yes, the global mind control tactics. I know. But we need some mind control tactics here. We have another contest coming up. This is brought to you by Lyft and Smile Canada. Okay, so we don't have a drum roll, but if there were a drum roll handy, this is where it would start to sound. I'm just giving you the time to do that. This week's giveaway includes 2 tickets to this year's Lyft and Company Expo in Toronto. That's coming up. And a bonus CBD prize pack from Smile Canada. The purveyors of Smile V-Juice and sublingual spray. Stay tuned. We just gave away Ross's Gold fantastic black glass pipe 24 karat gold logo. We got that. That's going off to Vancouver Island somewhere. And we have this one. So you got to stay tuned to Green Crush Pod on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for entry details. Instagram one at this time. Scott Polson, I believe his name is. We will announce the lucky winner on the next episode of Green Crush with Alan Park. And when you get to the Lyft, if you don't win tickets, go anyway. It's important. Go by the Smile Canada and Ross's Gold Glass and West Coast Gifts and Noble Extracts booth. All that's going on at Lyft Expo 2018, and say hi to Ross and the other folks at the team. I'm also going to be there. Very much looking forward to it. And we got some good news here. We got some good news. You can't always have bad news, right? I mean, I do have a lot of bad news because, boy, there's a lot of bad news to be had. But our old friend Woody Harrelson, who, I had the pleasure with draining an oven bag full of cannabis vapor a long time ago at a film festival. I'm looking forward to the fact that he is back on the cannabis train. He had stopped. He took a 2-year break. feeling a little bit tired of it, I guess, or just didn't want to have it anymore. And it turns out that Willie Nelson has gotten Woody smoking marijuana again. Apparently passed him a vape pen after some game of cards, and he was right back into it. Woody Harrelson sharing that information with us through the Ellen DeGeneres show, which I rarely see any of beyond, some little clip on the net. So I didn't catch Woody on there, but he says, I quit for almost 2 years, no smoking, no vaping. Every once in a while, you're going to have something edible. Let's be real. I'm not a nun. I think nuns eat things all the time. I was in a celebratory mood, and he hands me that vape pen, and I just snatched it, and I was like, fuck it. He said, I'll take a big draw of that. And Willie says, welcome home, son. So thanks, Willie Nelson. Thanks for bringing Woody back to the side of sensibility. Hey, and on Straight Cannabis, which has a great article about me in there. If you go to Straight Cannabis or Georgia Straight, and you can Google my name there. Amantha Siebert has written another great piece on an NPA counselor in Vancouver is going to introduce a motion that will require Vancouver cannabis dispensaries to carry licensed producer weed, once again moving into the side of big business, away from craft. Melissa DeGenova plans to introduce a motion to require dispensaries in Vancouver to carry cannabis grown by federally licensed producers. It's difficult for me to say this because I go to places where some of these folks are, but that stuff's not always the best stuff. That's an understatement. When I'm talking about stuff, I mean the licensed producer product. There have been huge problems with a lot of it, but even if it's okay, it's rather exclusionary not to be able to enjoy the fine wares of some more, shall we call them, dedicated bringers of the craft, folks that are more about the taste and the quality than just marketing a product and making money on it as best they can. As I said, we do have these ridiculous marijuana driving laws in the States. It says BC's top cop says he's frustrated by Ottawa's slow pace in selecting the roadside testing equipment. It's because it doesn't work. That's why they're having... It's called dithering, okay, that provinces will use to police drivers under the influence of soon-to-be legal marijuana. Solicitor General Mike Farnworth, I wonder if it's Farnsworth and it's a typo, I don't really know, said it was difficult for BC to pass new legislation this week that sets out a ticketing and policing regime for drivers and cannabis. We need more regimes, I think, because it still doesn't have details from Ottawa on what will be considered the federal standard for roadside drug impairment testing, and that's going to be because our old friend Bill Blair doesn't know what he's talking about. It starts with a police officer pulling over a driver and then suspecting the person might be impaired by marijuana. If that happens, the driver is taken back to the police station where a certified drug recognition expert... I would like to become one of these. Maybe I can make a lot of money sitting around waiting for innocent people to come in and say, nope, he's good. Nope, he's okay. Nope, she's fine. Yeah, they're going to have a drug recognition expert telling us whether or not they should be penalized with a ticket or their license revoked through an immediate roadside prohibition similar to the one existing for roadside prohibition for alcohol. But you can always tell a guy's hammered on booze. The various steps involve numerous officers and could take hours per arrest or potentially non-arrest. It will present a difficulty for police resources, admitted Farnworth. It's going to be very challenging, but we're doing the best we can. That's the problem. It sucks, and it's the best you can. Not good enough. If there was an approved roadside testing device, he says here, if there was, then the police could test for cannabis impairment at the scene of pulling a driver. This is written in a newspaper, okay, or a media outlet called theprovince.com. If there was an approved roadside testing device, then police could test for it. Wow, isn't that amazing? If I had a giant meal in front of me right now, I could be eating it. But I guess there isn't one, and I guess I'm not. but they should. These people, this is all coming to you once again from non-cannabis infected minds, or so they say. The new BC law states that even if such a device is approved by Ottawa in the future, police will still be required to take a person back to the local department to go through the drug recognition expert process, which involves things like checking a person's pupils and heart rate and conducting the standard field sobriety test that checks a person's ability to walk a straight line, which I thought you'd be doing on the road back when you pulled them over. And the chances are that 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes, an hour later, hour and a half later at the police station, even if the guy was high and impaired, he's going to have an easier time of doing that 90 minutes down the road than at the side of the road. And MLA Mike Morris says that this is going to have a very significant impact on policing resources. Yes, it's going to mean that more money is going to go into it. We're going to need to hire more officers. There are going to be more police drug recognition experts required. And this is all part of the delay, I'm sure. This is all part of the reason why they're taking so long to get things together. Because if it was really legal and it was really decriminalized, you wouldn't need any of this particular horse shit. So just before we go, also in Straight Cannabis, also by Amanda Siebert, also very, very important to bring forward, YouTube. Okay, so if you're listening to us now on YouTube, and maybe iTunes will go this way later, I don't know. This has been really great getting to know the audience here, and I want to just remind you folks that potentially this show will be gone before we even post it tonight. It could be gone tomorrow or never. But if you do find us missing, please remember to put @GreenCrushPod into your socials, and boom, all of a sudden YouTube won't be there, but the other ones will. And maybe Facebook will get rid of us. Maybe YouTube will. But we will be out there. We have plans. All of our shows and interviews are backed up. This one's being backed up right now. And if you can't find us on YouTube, it turns out that we will be out there. You'll just need to Google us or perhaps look on a different search engine such as DuckDuckGo and put in, Green Crush, Conspiracy Queries, Allen Park, and find us. And we will continue to broadcast this amazing situation, which is the loss, as Amanda writes it, as a huge loss of cultural history. So just on the way out, let me read this. The video no longer available because YouTube account associated with this video has been terminated. That's how fast they do it. They claim to have a 3 strikes policy, but of the ones I know, they don't recall getting the first 2 strikes. So that's a prompt that comes up on a lot of videos, and it's a cold reality for us cannabis vloggers and content creators, and we are facing this recent crackdown on weed-related material, and it's slowly decimating these channels and disappointing the subscribers and keeping this great information away from people. Several popular channels, including Urban Remo, Green Box Grown, Green Flower Media, Jorge Cervantes, Merne Juana, and others, have been terminated with no explanation from YouTube and no opportunity for recourse. They tell you that you can't advertise on it, so they don't want to deal with it. But that is about as lame an excuse as I can think of. Pot TV survived. They were lucky to keep their channels, but they've had certain videos removed. And this has all been starting up this year, 2018. As we get closer to legalization, it gets more likely that this information is going to disappear. It's a war on. It's definitely a war on, and I want to keep going with this because we need the more kinds of reactions from the government and these corporations, such as YouTube and others. The more restrictive they get, the more determined we become. You've seen that cannabis people are very, very creative, and we will continue to be so. So I would like to thank Michelle Ross for coming on. I am so looking forward to people understanding her book, understanding the information, Get yourself down to Lift Expo this year. Maybe we can see you there. I'm certainly going to be there off and on, meeting people and understanding more about this particularly fantastic topic of cannabis. Quick shout out to my team, Danny and Kim. Paul's out there somewhere too. We're really trying to bring you the truth, folks, and obviously that gets far more difficult as time as time creeps along. So that's the Raven. I got to get out of here. We are out of time. Thank you so much for listening to Green Crush. Check our socials at Green Crush Pod. We will be there. I am raising my fists, and you should raise your fist. And if I don't get an answer to this ridiculous hip-to-sip booze proffering from the LCBO Canada under this ridiculous quote-unquote leader, we will be definitely getting them on the phone next week. It's time for some more interactive phone calls. So thanks for listening. This is Green Crush. We'll come back next week. Enjoy a spliff this afternoon, won't you?